Namaste, guys. ChristianRLong, Life Enhancement Consulting, giving you a big and beautiful shout out on this Thursday evening here in Denver, Colorado. It is about, I think it's almost 6 o'clock p.m. Mountain Time right here. And I just got off the phone with a good friend of mine, lives in Germany. We were on the phone with each other for 2 hours, about 2 hours and 15 minutes. And so I have a lot of healings to catch up to for this evening, but I wanted to jump on real quick and do a live stream. He's very much into personal development. George, Namaste. He's very much into personal development. I'm very much into personal development. He's starting his coaching business. He has a lot of qualifications, and I've been doing coaching and healing for 15 years. And so it was good to come together, share some insights, some backgrounds, some understandings with one another. And man, it's been about 3.5 months or so since we last talked, and a lot of things had happened, and at least in my life in 3 months, and then he was sharing with me what's been going on with him the past 3 months. So we had a topic request. So a client of mine said, hey, can you talk about this topic? Can you talk about this topic? And I think this is a topic that probably everybody, George, that everybody at some point in time has had to deal with. And it's maybe in a lot of cases the most painful experience that any one of us have to deal with outside of the loss of a parent or terminal disease in the family or something like that. It's should I or should I not end a relationship? When do I know that the relationship is over? When do I know it's time to move on? And it's actually a very, very interesting question that there's many different, and I'm going to say there's many different levels and angles to approach this question with. Now, a lot of people I've noticed over coaching and healing people for 15 years, there's certain people that they want a clear, black and white answer. Do this, Jenny, I'm a namaste. Do this or don't do this. There's other people that no matter what you tell them, no matter what, they're going to do what they're going to do, period, end of story. Have you ever had an experience like that? Somebody comes to you for advice, for counsel, and they want you to tell them what they want to hear, right? And if you tell them anything outside of what they want to hear, it's like this ear closes, that ear closes, and nothing goes in, right? How many of us have friends, family members, even ourselves are like that from time to time, right? So that's one end of the spectrum. So here is black or white. Here is I'm not really going to listen to anything you have to say. And then you have the grays, right? You have the people that are seeking to understand, right? They have a challenge in their relationships. They're trying to figure out what is it? What's the factor that's causing the disharmony in this relationship? Should I move on? Should I stay and work it out? Is it on me? Is it on the other person? What's the percentages? All of these different ways of looking at it in levels of truth, right? So we have to understand that nothing in life is permanent. Nothing in the physical world is permanent. Nothing in the physical world is permanent because people are always generating thoughts and energy is always moving, right? People are always generating thoughts and energy is always moving. So to make the assumption that the person we met 5 years ago is going to be the exact same person that we met, that we know now is not realistic, right? It's not an accurate viewpoint. So Denise, namaste. The Lord Buddha gave us some very, very powerful tools. I was actually sharing with a client earlier today that if people understood these tools, these super simple tools, if they understood them deeply, they could transform their lives like that. They could alleviate their suffering like that. It's called the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path, the first step in the Eightfold Path is right viewpoint, meaning seeing something clearly, seeing something as it is. The reason we suffer in our lives, Elizabeth, namaste, is because we have a certain expectation that is not being met or fulfilled. So as soon as we change our expectation to make it more realistic, in congruence with the reality of the situation, guess what? Our suffering goes from here down to here. So what would an example of that look like? So some of you may have heard the story from the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Dr. Stephen Covey. And he gave the example that he was on a subway train one time, and he saw this father with all these kids, these younger kids running around and causing complete and utter havoc and chaos, disturbing everyone else's ride. Yana, but namaste. And so Stephen Covey was kind of getting frustrated and a little bit irritated, and the father, looking at him, could see that. And he had this very sad, very solemn look on his face, and he says, we're all heading to the hospital. I just found out that their mother died, and I don't know how to tell them and break the news to them. So what happened? Stephen Covey had a certain viewpoint, a certain perception about this father and his irresponsibility of taking care of his children, right? Which was causing Stephen Covey suffering. But as soon as he had a more accurate viewpoint of the situation, he immediately, instantaneously alleviated his suffering. So he went from suffering, right, to having compassion, from misunderstanding to understanding and love. Does that make sense? So in our relationships with the people closest to us, the best thing that we can do for ourselves and for the other person is to understand where they are coming from. To understand where they are coming from. It's easy to make snap judgments, meaning that person is behaving that way for this reason. Well, that's one level of truth. The other level of truth is the person could be acting for that reason based on 10 or 15 or 20 things that you are completely unaware of, right? So it would be similar to somebody judging you. You have a bad day, and that person says all of these things about you, and then you think to yourself, well, I haven't had a bad day in months or years. But that person's judging you entirely based on that one experience or one interaction with you. What's the old saying? First impressions are lasting, right? So when we're in a relationship with another person, our goal, our objective is to understand them to the best of our abilities. So one of my favorite clinical psychologist that I follow, his name is Dr. Jordan Peterson out of the University of Toronto in Canada. And he made this a beautiful metaphor one time. And he talks about how most of us are always trying to prove the other person wrong and prove ourselves right. Right? So we're sitting on opposite sides of the table like a negotiation, like a hostile takeover. I'm going to prove that I'm right, and I'm going to prove that you're wrong. Right? What do you think about ghosting? To do it, ghosting. Okay, that's a good point. We'll cover that too. Yeah, I haven't heard that one in a while. Melissa, but namaste. So it's a combative connection. He says a better way of looking at it, viewpoint, a better way of looking at it is if you have a loved one that is trying to explain their position to you and they are frustrated, they're upset, they're angry, they're fearful, they're whatever, in explaining that to you, what you should do, not the other person, what you should do is go from sitting on the opposite side of the table to sit on the same side of the table with them, metaphorically speaking, and do your best to help them make their argument to you. So if they have a problem with how you are late for things, help them explain that better. If they have a problem of how you lose your temper, help them explain that better to you. Because when you get on their side of the table, they feel acknowledged, they feel recognized, they feel loved, they feel understood, and then that does what? Alexa, namaste. That harmonizes you and the other person, right? That harmonizes you and the other person. But what do we have a tendency to do in our relationships? We want to make our point. We want to be right. We want to make the other person wrong. And we become combative with one another versus sitting on the same side of the table and seeking to understand why that person is the way that they are. Why do they think the way that they think? Why do they feel the way that they feel? Why do they show up in the way that they show up, right? But guess what, guys? I got a surprise for you. That's not easy to do. You know what's easy to do? To wash your hands of a situation. to wash your hands of relationships. That's the easy thing to do. It's like, oh, I met you on Tinder. I met you on Match. I met you on eHarmony. I met you in a bar. I met you at a dance event. I met you at a yoga class. I met you at whatever. Just as easily as I met you, interacted with you, connected with you, I can just as easily do this. As soon as it becomes difficult, as soon as it becomes hard, right? That does not require any level of development or skill whatsoever. Does this make sense? It's easy to give up. It's easy to quit. It's easy to run. That requires no skill whatsoever. Funny enough, the same client I was talking to earlier today brought up, we were talking about anger, right? It's easy to express anger towards somebody. That doesn't require any skill. You know what requires skill? Being still, being quiet, opening up your ears, right? And taking the person's feedback without attaching your ego, your personality, or your negative pride to it, right? You're sitting down, you're having a conversation, and the person's giving you feedback. As soon as you become emotionally reactive, what does that person do? They shut down, right? So you have to be very careful that when you communicate with your partner and you say, look, can you please open up with me and share with me why you're frustrated, why you're angry, why you're sad, why you're depressed, why you're distant, or why I feel those things from you. You, man or woman, have to give that person space to share that information with you. Don't judge them, don't critique them, nothing. Just, okay, great. And that's difficult to do when the information is about you. They're sad because of something you did. They're angry because of something you did. They're confused because of something you did, right? Now, on the higher level, we are all responsible for our thoughts, our words, and our actions. So yes, there's a level of them not taking responsibility for their inner state, right? They're looking for a source of their pain. We're both from Springfield. Yeah, I was born in Springfield back in the day. Source of pain, right? On the higher level, we are responsible for our thoughts, our words, and our actions. Nobody else. So nobody is making you feel a certain way. You are choosing to allow that person to influence you to feel a certain way. But we're not there, right? We're not that same level, right? We're not that same level. We meet people where they're at. Ted, Atman Namaste. Good to have you on as always. We're not at that level yet. So when you create a space for somebody to openly share their thoughts, their feelings, their insecurities, their weaknesses, their blind spots, their anger, whatever, I'm talking to men and women on this, you have to shut your mouth and let that person release. Joseph, Atman Namaste. Let that person release. You're temporarily being a psychic garbage can for the other person, right? That's the loving and compassionate thing to do, because you would want somebody to hold space for you. If somebody went up to you and said, hey man, what's going on, right? And then you started to tell them, well, this, and this is going on. The person goes, whoa. I don't need to be hearing that. What? This isn't about me, right? How would you feel? You would feel hurt. You would feel unacknowledged. You would feel discarded, not heard, right? So you can't bait somebody into having an open dialogue, an open conversation with, and then as soon as they start opening, you're like, wait. That's your problem. That's your fault. That's your childhood. That's your trauma. It has nothing to do with me. Hello? A little compassion, a little mercy, a little understanding, right? So, first thing, right? The question is, when do I know it's time to go? When do I know that this is enough? When do I know that this is ending? Again, many different levels of truth, many different ways of looking at the situation. Number one, understanding. Understanding why that person is the way that they are. Why are they thinking the way they're thinking? They're feeling the way that they're feeling. They're acting the way that they're acting. To understand the person and then the outside environment. Are they being the way that they're being because of their job? Because of family influence? because something traumatic happened in their childhood, their teenage years, recently? Is it connected to finances? It's understanding the totality of the person, which again requires time, requires effort, requires a level of humility, because we think just because we've been with somebody for a year, 5 years, 20 years, that we know everything about them. That's not true. You know how I know that's not true? You've been with you your entire life, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years or more. Do you know everything about yourself? No. So if you don't know everything about yourself and you're with you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, how can you possibly expect yourself to know and understand everything about your partner? So understanding, it starts with understanding, right? Understanding. Now, because most of everything that I share with you guys and teach with you guys is from my teacher, Grandmaster Cho Koksui, I come from the energetic perspective primarily. I come from the energy world first, then it bleeds into the mental world, the psychological world, the emotional world, the physical world, right? So we approach it first energetically, which then bleeds into the other levels of our interaction with society. Hold on, Yana says, Master Nona always tells singles in pranic healing to find our couple inside pranic healing and our Hatha Yoga practitioners. What do you think about that? What is your experience? Denise, Hatha Namaste. That's an excellent question, which actually kind of leads into where we're going with this conversation. So Yana's asking the question, if you're a pranic healer or an Arhatic yogi, should you date other pranic healers and other Arhatic yogis? Similarly, if you're a Christian, should you date other Christians? If you're Jewish, should you date other Jews? If you're Muslim, should you date other Muslims, right? If you're an atheist, should you date other atheists, right? So there's, again, not a black or white answer to the question, because there are levels of truth and different viewpoints. The interesting thing about pranic healing and Arhatic yoga that is unique to our school is that we have a healing arm. So what does that mean? That means when we have conflict with our partner, we have healing tools to help with that conflict. If we have misunderstanding with our partner, we have tools to gain deeper, broader understanding of why our partner is the way that our partner is, right? But there's a caveat to this. When you introduce energy into a system, it accelerates the positive and negative aspects of that system. So what do I mean by that? If you have a car and the car goes 5 miles an hour, it's kind of boring, it's kind of like dull, it's like, come on already. If the car is going 85 miles an hour, it's exciting, it's fun, you get to where you want to go faster, right? So the system is working good. So the more energy or the more acceleration you add to that system that's working, the better it is. Now, what if you had a flat tire and you're going 5 miles an hour? Are you going to notice the flat tire? Probably not. Now, if you took that car with the flat tire going 85 miles an hour, are you going to notice the flat tire? Absolutely. So, in the world of relationships and the world of energy, when you have a relationship, Susan Atman Namaste, when you have a relationship and it has a certain level of energy, it's going at a certain speed, right? So let's say there's a little bit of anger. Kim Atman Namaste, take that relationship. You have a little bit of, Himena Atman Namaste, you have a little bit of anger in that relationship, and then you add a bunch of spiritual energy to it. What did you just accelerate? You accelerate the good and the not so good aspect of the relationship. So if there's anger, you're making the tendency is more anger. Eliyama Namaste. Jealousy, tendency for more jealousy. Greed, tendency for more greed. Because energy magnifies the good and the not so good. If you take fertilizer and you pour it on the ground, does it only fertilize the grass or does it also fertilize the weeds? It fertilizes the weeds as well. So if you start off with a beautiful relationship that's healthy and bright and shiny and happy and harmonious, and you throw on a bunch of spiritual energy, that becomes a super powerful, transformative, healing relationship. But if you have a relationship that has all these like little baby seeds of not so good energy, and then you stuff a bunch of energy on top of it, it becomes not so healthy, right? These are nuances, but the question was asked, so I want to cover it for everybody. So that being said, the first part is understanding. The second part, basing it from the energetic perspective first, is healing that person. You're like, whoa. I thought the question was, how do we know when to end a relationship? Well, if you went to a doctor and you gave the doctor your symptoms, would he give you medication to see how the medication affects your symptoms? Or would he say, you know what, let's just take off the leg. Let's just go with the most severe tactic first. Let's remove your leg or your arm or your shoulder or your kidneys or your liver, right? Would the doctor go to the extreme right off the bat? No. There would be a process. So the first step of the process would be, okay, there's disharmony between you and your partner. Okay, so what does that mean? The energy passing back and forth between the two of you is congested, it's stagnant, it's diseased, there's blockages, there's whatever. So you do healing. Now, if you're not a pranic healer, that's okay. Hire a pranic healer and have them heal your relationship. That's one strategy. So healing the relationship on a regular basis. Tip number 3 is blessing that relationship. You're like, whoa. You're getting a little bit too out there, a little bit too spiritual. Okay. When we are not getting along with our partner, what do we have the tendency to do more of? Do we have the tendency to project good thoughts and good words towards our partner when it's not going well? Or do we have the tendency to project not so good thoughts and not so good words towards our partner when it's not going well? So we have a tendency to attack them psychically with our thoughts and our words, which pierces their aura, which forces prana or energy to leak out of their energy body, depleting them, deflating them, weakening them. And now that they're weak, how much love, kindness, sweetness, tenderness, joy, superfluous energy do they have to share with us? Not much, because we spend all day attacking them psychically. So the third thing that I would recommend adding to the relationship is blessing the person. For those of you who do not know what blessing is, it's very simple. You raise your hands in a blessing position. You imagine your partner 12 inches tall in front of you. Wana, ama namaste, 12 inches tall in front of you. You be aware of your heart. You be aware of your crown. And you bless that person with love, with sweetness, with tenderness, with joy, with harmony, with vibrancy. And you keep projecting those energies to that person because it will do what? It will transform them. Jose, ama namaste. It will transform them. Just like you psychically attack somebody, it weakens them. If you psychically bless somebody with good energies, it uplifts them, raises their vibration, and expands their energy. Pretty fascinating, right? So that would be my third recommendation. My fourth recommendation. This is a big one. This is one that kind of goes back to point number 1 about understanding. This requires you to take responsibility for your thoughts, your words, and your actions in the relationship. So what do I mean by that? If you had your partner standing on a soapbox preaching to you about love, about kindness, about patience, about tolerance, about all these beautiful, wonderful qualities, but they weren't practicing any of those things, would you be receptive? would you be listening? Probably not, right? So the fourth component is being an example. So look, you want your partner to be loving and kind and sweet and generous and patient and tolerant and all of these wonderful positive qualities. The question you have to ask yourself, are you those things? Because if you are not those things, then that means you're not planting those seeds in the relationship. And if you're not planting those seeds in the relationship, how can you expect to get those seeds as a harvest in that relationship, right? If you plant hatred between you and your partner, how can you expect to get something loving back? If you plant love, can you expect to get hatred back from your partner? Not necessarily, right? Susan says, most important relationship is with the self, must practice healing and self-forgiveness. Yes, 100%. Correct. Which goes back to the healing component. Remember the second aspect was healing. So we heal our partner, because as we heal our partner, as we change their energy, they have better thoughts, better words, better feelings, better actions, better exchange of prana back and forth, as well as ourselves. Most people don't practice self-healing. Most people don't practice self-forgiveness. So it also goes back to either hire somebody to do it for you, heal you, or you practice it yourself on a regular basis, right? Which is interesting because the act of not practicing that is lack of self-love. So when you don't heal yourself, lack of self-love. When you don't forgive yourself, lack of self-love. It's really quite fascinating. So the last aspect that I wanted to cover, so we got the being an example. I can't emphasize it enough. Be an example, be an example, be an example. Be an example means you're not preaching, you're not on a soapbox, you're not pushing, you're not judging, right? Because we don't like it when other people do that to us, right? So why would we expect a different result when we do it to other people? Don't tell your partner to be a good person. You be a good person, and by you being a good person, that will transform your partner and it will be an example for your partner. Kind of a no-brainer, right? And then the last component, which will wrap up the points about when do I leave this relationship, or when do I know it's time to end the relationship? It's healthy boundaries, healthy self-interest, healthy solar plexus. So we have a heart chakra, right? Which is designed to love and serve and give to other people in a relationship, for instance. And then we have solar plexus, which is designed to maintain our sense of self, our sense of self-worth, self-esteem, self-respect, self-love, right? So if you notice that you're in a relationship where your boundaries are constantly being crushed, and the interesting thing about this is most people that say my partner is overstepping their boundaries or my partner never respects me, two things are typically happening. One, you as the individual don't even know what your boundaries are. That's a pretty big one. You don't know what your boundaries are. And then number two is you don't articulate those boundaries to that person and enforce those boundaries if a person steps over them. So you A, have to know your boundaries. B, you have to communicate your boundaries because the other person is not a mind reader unless they're a high-level clairvoyant. And then three, you have to enforce those boundaries if the person crosses them. There has to be a level of penalty. There has to be a level of severity when people cross your boundaries. So for instance, if I was dating somebody and they were being very disrespectful towards me in some way, shape, or form, putting me down in some way, I would immediately acknowledge that of like, so what I hear you saying is blah, blah, blah. That is not acceptable to me. And if we continue this dynamic, our relationship is over. Or if we continue this dynamic, our phone call is over. Or if we continue this dynamic, we're not spending time with each other next week or something like that, right? So I'm saying this is not acceptable to me. This is the consequences of if we go there. And then if the person goes there, you have to be ready, willing, and able to meet that person with the severity. And it's not about being severe and being cruel and being hurtful and putting the other person in their place. It's not about that. It's about clearly articulating to the other person, this is what is acceptable and this is what is not acceptable. And you know, the interesting thing is the older my body has gotten and the clearer I've gotten in my own boundaries, my own self-respect, my own self-esteem, I don't have those situations come up into my life. I don't have women disrespecting me because I do my very best to respect other women, to acknowledge and honor them. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes all the time. Hello, I'm human. But in general, I'm much better now than I was 10 years ago. So as I've grown and evolved and matured as a man, I don't have the energies of, I haven't sown the seeds of disrespect, right? So I deserve to be respected because I'm respecting you. If you don't respect me, then these are the consequences of that. And I don't tolerate it. I don't put up with it. Not acceptable. And I tell that to a lot of my clients. But what I've noticed as a pattern is they don't communicate their boundaries. Like they know internally, some of them, they know internally, all right, these are my boundaries. These are my negotiables. These are my non-negotiables. This is where I'm flexible. This is where I'm compassionate and understanding and loving and patient and tolerant. But these things in these ways, not acceptable. Great. You have to communicate that to the other person, and you have to enforce it if the person breaks that boundary because it's self-respect. Oh yes, Matthew Hussey. Yes, a total guru. I'm familiar with his work. Some of you may or may not know I've taught social dynamics between men and women for many, many years. I was a practitioner. I taught many men. That's not a world that I'm in right now, but I'm effective at counseling people and healing people when it comes to relationships because I've been there and done that in many, 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 many different ways because I wanted to become masterful of something. I wanted to understand it. So I'm talking to you not only from theory, but I'm also talking to you from a lot of practical because I've been there and done that. So healthy self-boundaries. So just to cover everything that we covered, the list, number one, understanding the other person and why they are the way that they are. When you have understanding, you have love, and you can transform the relationship. Number two, it's healing that person regularly and healing yourself regularly. The reason there is conflict between you and the other person is because of the energy between the two of you. Change the energy, change the relationship, which goes into number three, blessing that person regularly. Here they are, a little tiny 12-inch self, and you be aware of your heart, you be aware of your crown, and you bless that person with love, with sweetness, with tenderness, with joy, with compassion, with mercy, right? And that will change their energy, and that will change the way that the two of you interact with one another versus attacking them psychically. Not good. Not good karma. Okay? Number four is being an example. You have to be an example. You have to be an example. Stop telling the world to get their act together if you don't have your act together. I'm sharing. Yay! Does that make sense? You have to have your act together. You have to be an example and an embodiment. And you also have to get people's buy-in. If your partner is not open and receptive to having a conversation, then they're not open and receptive. By healing them, by blessing them, and by being an example to them, they, in time, will open up. They will be more receptive to having that conversation. Number five, healthy boundaries, knowing your boundaries, communicating your boundaries, and enforcing your boundaries. And here's the thing, when you enforce your boundaries, you don't have to be an aggressive person about it. You don't have to come from this level of deep anger and frustration. Somebody can be yelling and screaming at you and calling you vulgar names, and you can say, look, this is not acceptable. If you continue speaking to me like that, I'm leaving. That's it. No, you don't have to be emotional. You don't have to cry. You don't have to attack the other person psychically or verbally. You just clearly articulate, these are my boundaries. I have self-respect. I have dignity. I care for myself. I care for you. And I will not, under any circumstances, tolerate you treating me that way. Period. No emotions. Comes from the ajna, higher will, right? Healthy boundaries is a healthy solar plexus. And the reason you have a healthy solar plexus is because you have a healthy ajna. So they're interconnected. Higher will, lower will. Mental will, emotional will. And that's a big thing that people have to understand about boundaries. When you're understanding your boundaries, Lisa, I'm gonna say, when you're understanding your boundaries, when you're communicating your boundaries, and when you're enforcing your boundaries, you don't have to be emotional about it. It's not necessary. And you can actually influence the other person more by being unemotional. I hope that makes sense. And then the last one, I'm kind of throwing this in as a bonus. I'm a big, huge, gigantic believer about this. Huge. I'm very, very different in this than most men. Is I love to communicate. So when communication shuts down in a relationship, in my world, the relationship's dead. That's my experience. As soon as people stop talking, the relationship is dead. Now, it's one thing if the person says, hey, can I have a couple hours or a couple days to think, to ponder, to question? That's a different story because the person is consciously withdrawing to work on themselves to get what? Understanding about the relationship versus there's a conflict, there's disharmony, there's an argument, there's something that's not right. And guess what? One person or both people close down. No energy is being passed back and forth between you and the other person. So the relationship, the energy of the relationship starts to die down. So I'm a really big believer of communicating. But here's the thing, men and women, communication is a two-way street. Do not force the other person to communicate. If they don't want to communicate, they don't want to communicate. Which leads us to the ultimate aspect of a relationship. Kim, I'm gonna say is that the relationship, how to put this? You both have to want the relationship to work. Right? So you can't have one person that's all in and the other person that's not in, or one foot in, one foot out, one foot in, one foot on a banana peel, as my dad would say, right? You have to have both people ready, willing, and able to make the relationship work. Look, we all have our faults, we have our flaws, we have our weaknesses, we have our negative tendencies. I have many of them, right? But I'm always ready, willing, and able to work it out with somebody who is ready, willing, and able to work it out. Does that make sense? If the other person is not ready, willing, and able to make it work, they're not there. So that's a pretty good indicator that the relationship is over, that it's time to move on. But have you done the other things that we talked about? Have you sought to understand? Have you been healing yourself and the other person regularly? Have you been blessing yourself and the other person regularly? Have you been an example of love and kindness and sweetness and tenderness and patience and tolerance, right, to the other person? Have you clarified your boundaries, expressed your boundaries, and enforced your boundaries? If you've done all these things, which most people haven't, but if you've done all these things and the relationship still isn't working out, well, I have a big surprise for you. It's over. That's how you know the relationship is over. Does that make sense? Is that clear? I hope that was for you guys. Do you guys have any questions, comments, concerns? We brought up this topic because a client wanted clarification. Right? We do these live streams pretty regularly, And I always encourage you guys, hey, you want a topic to cover? We'll give it from the perspective of energy healing, meditation, and practical spirituality, right? That's my area of expertise, so I stay within my zone of genius. So whenever I'm talking about a topic, it's from that perspective. It's from that viewpoint. Chris, Atman Namaste, long time. So Ellie says, if the person doesn't want to communicate in a way we expect, is it still worth blessing it? That's a very good question. So a mentor of mine said this a while ago. You can take it for however you want to take it. So I was in a relationship, amazing relationship, super bright, a lot of cool things, amazing, right? And then because of certain weaknesses I had, not the other person, certain weaknesses I had, it was negatively influencing that relationship, right? Because of my own lack of awareness, my own lack of understanding, right? So I started healing the relationship. Everything, listen guys, trust me, I've been doing this for 16 years. Whatever I'm recommending to you guys on these streams, I'm doing myself. I'm not saying one thing and doing something different. I promise you. Whatever I'm telling you, I've been there and done that dozens, if not more times, because I want to be a good example for my teacher, Grandmaster Choa Koksui. I'm not perfect. I didn't claim to be perfect, but I try to get better every day, little by little by little, right? So what I'm sharing with you, I'm practicing. So isn't it interesting that I was like, okay, I need to be a better example, and I need to heal and bless this person. Guess what? Whenever I blessed and whenever I healed that person, relationship changed. Loving, harmonious, beautiful, bright, shiny. But guess what? Because of her weaknesses and my weaknesses, that healing had to be done on a regular basis. So my mentor gave me a viewpoint. Take it for what you want. She said, well, do you want to have to work that hard at a relationship in the beginning? Do you want to have to work that hard at a relationship in the beginning? Because it wasn't a yes or a no, or like, if you have to work hard at a relationship in the beginning, then that means it's not worth it. That's not what she was saying. She was asking me an actual question to get clarity and understanding. Because, hey, what if I do 3 months of regular healing and blessing of myself and the other person, and then the rest of our lives is an amazing, phenomenal, beautiful, bright relationship? Would that be worth it? 3 months of effort, right? She was just asking the question, well, is that worth it to you? Do you want to have a relationship that you have to heal often and bless often in order for it to be workable and loving and harmonious? And at the time, at the transitional period, I was like, it's not worth it to me. It's too hard. It's too difficult. It requires too much time. I'm already a full-time healer. It's like I got to do healing here and over here. Oh, it's too much, right? So I chose not to do it. Partly out of a conscious decision or conscious choice, and the other part of it was out of laziness, right? Can't fault me for it. It's just where I was at. But now, knowing what I know, you can transform a relationship through energy. I have many examples of doing that. I'm just saying this is one that is coming to my awareness. Mind you, Atman Namaste. So is that clear? Do you guys have other questions about what we covered? Again, relationships are extremely complex. They're extremely dynamic. And the reason most people, listen to me very carefully, the reason most people do not have deep, rich, fulfilling relationships is, one, they don't understand themselves very well. That's one factor. Two, they don't put in the time and the effort and the energy to go deep. You know what we do? We covered this at the beginning of the stream. We go on a date with somebody, we have a few laughs, we have sex, we connect, it's blah, blah, blah. And then as soon as we see a weakness, a negative tendency, something that just doesn't feel right, we're out, we're gone. Why? Because we live in a society that we can pick up another partner whenever. Tinder, Match, eHarmony, Hinge, Bumble, whatever. Million different ways to meet a million different people. So we have this weird abundance mentality when it comes to relationships. But here's the thing. Most people are unfulfilled in their relationships because they never go deep. If you're always jumping from relationship to relationship to relationship to relationship to relationship, you never get depth. You never understand the other person. And guess what? The other person never understands you. Hello? Is this making sense? Is this clear for you guys? I mean, what I'm sharing with you took me years of experimentation, trial and error, studying, practicing, suffering, getting back on the horse. Years of suffering. That's why you have to understand when you read a book in general of a qualified person sharing their experience, they're condensing 5, 10, 15, 20 years of life experience into one book that you can read and transform your life. That's super, super powerful. All the books in pranic healing that Grandmaster Choa Koksui wrote, 25, 30 years of experience condensed into one book. You can read it, practice it, alleviate your suffering. Read it, practice it, have more inner peace, happiness, and joy. Read it, practice it, and improve the quality of your relationships. That's pretty profound. Or you can just go out on your own and experiment. I've tried that too. That's a much, much, much more painful way of doing it. So, that being said, do you guys have any other questions, comments, concerns, clarifications that you would like to ask while we're on the stream right now? For those of you who are looking for deeper understanding, deeper healing, deeper transformation, hire me. I'm easily accessible. You go onto my website, ChristianRLong.com, schedule a healing session, bam. I get it in my calendar, it's set up, we see each other on Skype or Zoom or FaceTime or whatever. We do 30 minutes of coaching to get what? Understanding. Then we do 30 minutes of healing to remove the blockages and obstacles and impediments around the thing that we're trying to understand. You want better relationships? There's blockages around that. Let's remove them. Now I see it clearly. Now my relationship is transformed. Make sense? So I hope that helps. Eons of lives of GMCKS to give all pranic healing and Hatha Yoga. Correct. For those of you who are familiar with lifetimes, right? We have this lifetime that we're currently experiencing in, but the older the soul, the more advanced the soul, the more lifetimes that soul has had to learn lessons, have experiences, and become wiser. So then they become a teacher. And then they teach other souls, physically and non-physically, on how to alleviate their suffering and also become illuminated or enlightened like them. So she's saying eons of lifetimes, meaning Grandmaster Choa Koksui, the gentleman behind me, he was Chinese Filipino in this incarnation, but he's been a great, great teacher for many, 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 many lifetimes from our understanding, right? Again, not asking you to believe, not preaching from a pulpit. Practice your own discernment, experiment, and draw your own conclusion. Donata. Amanda says, please share these wisdom jewels as mucho as you can, especially about this theme. I also instruct people about this theme, advising after asking my counseling. Your feedback and experience is so helpful, friend. You're very, very welcome. Yeah. A thing I've noticed, I brought this up to several people in my life, friends, previous girlfriends, family members, and every one of my clients, is the ability to listen. The ability to listen. Very, very few people have the ability to listen. Now you might be thinking, well, wait a minute. If I have my mouth closed, does that mean I'm listening? No, not at all. That doesn't mean you're listening. Just because someone's talking, Robin, I'm going to mistake. You missed a great talk, man. You're going to have to watch the replay. Just because the other person is talking and you're not, doesn't mean you're listening. There's a term in coaching called active listening. And Grandmaster Cho Koksui has a sutra or a quote connected to this where he says, you want to pay attention to the essence in between the words. The essence in between the words. So you can be having a conversation with a friend and you ask your friend, how is everything? And they're like, hey, everything's amazing. So if you're just hearing them, everything's amazing, right? And you're not listening to the essence in between what they're saying, you're going to miss that your friend's actually depressed. You're going to miss that your friend's disappointed. You're going to miss that your friend is angry. Amy, I'm a namaste. You're going to miss something. So active listening is not just hearing the sound coming out of the other person's mouth. Listening is an extremely important skill that is super undeveloped. See, when you guys jump on these live streams, what do you see? I Am Fine is a great one. You see me talking, right? But when I'm working with people, I'm listening, and then what I'm listening and what I'm picking up, that determines the type of question that I ask them, with what kind of energy, what level of truth, right? It's super important, but most people, they don't know how to listen, therefore they don't know how to ask good, intelligent questions. Mittal, I'm going to say Anthony Robbins is a big proponent of this quote. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of the questions that you ask. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of the questions you ask. The better you're listening, the better the quality of questions. Listening to what? Listening to the higher soul. If you know how to listen to your higher soul, right? You can ask good questions and it will provide you with the right answers. If you know how to listen to your partner and loved one, they can provide you better answers and feedback, right? There's an old saying that praying is talking to God, meditation is listening, right? Praying is talking to God. God, please help me with this. God, please give me this. God, please give me that, right? Meditation is asking the question and now listening. Lord God, what is my life's purpose? It may take you years to get that answer. Now, here's the interesting thing. The answer is provided immediately from the higher soul, but because of our own blind spots, weaknesses, heaviness, congestion, blockages, obstacles, impediments, our ability to hear is less because we have a lot of inner noise. The more you meditate, the less inner noise you have. The less inner noise you have, the easier it is to hear the whisper of your higher soul. Amy says, hey friend, I was reading about how our limbic system is how we all read all, am I reading this right? How our limbic system is how we read all of those nonverbal cues. I love neuroscience. Yes, correct. So the limbic system is connected to our emotions. Whoops. Reminder's always good. Ellie says, I was actually asleep and woke up to find your live was halfway through. I caught the live at the right time. Great talk. Good. We covered a lot of material. These streams, have you guys noticed, for those of you who've been logging on the past month or so, the streams are getting longer and longer and longer. More questions, more energy. I don't talk for the sake of talking, even though it sounds like that. You just like to hear yourself talk. Jillian, namaste. It's also, I'm tapping into the energy of the presentation, right? We do a little invocation, we have a topic, and then the energy flows. As long as the energy is flowing, then we continue sharing, we continue talking. When the energy starts to close, when it starts to become flat, ta-da, the talk is over. Does that make sense? It's really quite interesting. So I hope those points are helpful. I hope you hire me so I can help transform your life. With 16 years of experience, I hope I know a little bit of what I'm talking about and what I'm doing. Not perfect, but definitely on the road to perfection with the help and blessings of Grandmaster Choa Koksui. And so if you guys have future topics that you would like us to cover, Olympia, Ama Namaste. If you have future topics that you would like us to cover, please let me know. And if you got value out of this stream, share it on your personal page, share it on your professional page, share it on another platform, Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever. Rocky, Ama Namaste. It's been a while, son. Hope you're doing well. Lots of love to you. Hola. ¿Cómo estás? So that's it. That's our talk for this evening. If you just jumped on, excuse me, as soon as I get off, watch the replay. I promise it's packed with lots of information, lots of energy, inspiring to have higher quality relationships with the people closest to us. Because, we're in a relationship with somebody, right? We want to have it loving and fun and joyful and celebratory and beautiful energies going back and forth. We don't want to be dragged down and miserable and exhausted and fighting all the time, arguing about this, about trivial things, blah, blah, blah. It's no. We want a loving relationship. Loving relationship. And as Susan covered earlier, Chat out, namaste. As Susan covered earlier, it starts here. A loving relationship starts with the self, then that radiates outward. And here's a cool thing you'll begin to notice. As you love yourself more, you know what you're going to start attracting? People who love themselves. So now you have two interdependent people, two loving people coming together. Versus this person feels incomplete, this person feels incomplete, so they're seeking other persons to complete them. That's called codependency. Right? Don't recommend it. I prefer interdependency. Now, there are certain people, certain couples that are independent. I never really got that dynamic. I've not experienced that in my dating life, in any of my relationships. I do know of certain couples that they live in separate houses. They see each other occasionally, but they are in deeply committed relationships with each other. But I'm like, you guys barely see each other, but that works for them. I don't understand it. I have a hard time relating to it, but just because I don't understand it and don't relate to it doesn't mean it's a bad thing, doesn't mean it's wrong. Alyssa, Atman Namaste, doesn't mean whatever, right? To each his own. The question you have to ask yourself is my relationship with my partner causing me suffering? And if it's causing me suffering, then I follow the protocol that we talked about earlier in the stream. Follow that protocol 2 or 3 months. Erica, Atman Namaste. Follow that protocol for 2 or 3 months. Your relationship will be transformed. And here's the other cool thing. It will be transformed in a way that you now have clarity and understanding, right? So you're asking the question, how do I know if I should end this relationship or stay in this relationship? Carolina, Atman Namaste. Well, how do you know? You don't have clarity. You don't have understanding. That's why you don't know. But if you do that protocol for the next 2 or 3 months, what's going to happen? You're going to get clarity. You're going to know that you know that you know. That's a beautiful place to be. That's power. Clarity, certainty, that's power. Man, you guys really, a lot of energy for relationship stuff. Well, mental note. So if you guys have other topic requests connected to relationships that you would like more healing on, more clarification on, more understanding on, please let me know. Because as you give, you receive, right? So if I want better, higher quality relationships, then by helping other people have better, higher quality relationships, I entitle myself to having that. And I would never steer you in a way that would be detrimental to your growth and development. Because I'm basing it on the teachings I've received from my teacher, Grandmaster Choa Koksui. Doesn't mean I practice it every single second of my life, but every day I become better and better and better. Because I want to be I want to be an example for my teacher, and I want to be an example for other people so their suffering can be alleviated so they can move their lives forward, right? That's very, very important for me. I'm a huge believer of practice what you preach, walk the walk, talk the talk, all of it. Not a big believer of do as I say, not as I do. I don't agree with that methodology. Sam prefers interdependency too. Yeah. Good job, Sam. I like that. Yeah, interdependency. Two people that love themselves, two people that have good self-esteem, good self-respect, good self-worth coming together. How beautiful is that? But here's the problem. You guys ready? See, the energy's flowing again. Here's the problem. Most people, myself included at one point, jump from relationship to relationship to relationship to relationship to relationship to relationship to relationship. So what's happening? They're never getting the time to develop awareness, to develop understanding, so they have better self-esteem, self-respect, self-worth, etc. So they just keep repeating the same pattern over and over and over and over and over and over and over again with another person, which causes more negative karma, more chaos, more drama, right, in somebody's life. But if you spend 3 months or 6 months of doing deep inner work, understanding who and what you are, loving yourself, respecting yourself, caring for yourself, then when you do connect with somebody, you're going to be able to see them clearly, right? You're not going to see them as a source of energy. You're going to go, hey, that's a person I could develop something beautiful with. I have a lot to offer, and I can see that that other person has a lot to offer. But if we're weak, we're depleted, we're confused, we're stressed out, we're going to attract a similar energy. I'll leave you guys with this. This is actually a really cool point. As I was talking with my friend this evening, he's debating on how to put this. He likes to date, but he's not looking for a serious, committed relationship this year, right? This year. He wants to focus on his business, which is understandable. You know, he's starting it up, so you got to put in more time, money, and energy in the beginning, right? So he was asking me the question, because he knows I used to teach this stuff to men. He was asking me the question about masculine energy, right? And this is a really fascinating topic that I'm still understanding from different angles and viewpoints. And he says, how do I become more masculine, right? How do I become more masculine? And it was interesting because he thought that masculine energy came from the solar plexus, which deals with aggression, right? When you're being aggressive, when you're being, like that, solar plexus chakra. So I asked him a simple question. I go, do you want to attract a refined woman or an unrefined woman? And he says, well, I want to attract a refined woman, of course. I said, makes sense. So if you're coming from excessive, aggressive, lower emotional energy, what kind of woman are you going to attract? Because like energy attracts like energy, right? He's like, well, I'm going to probably attract that. So chaos attracts more chaos. Drama attracts more drama. Fear attracts more fear. Dependency attracts codependency, right? So I said, well, what would it look like if you, what would it look like? Sorry, guys. We're at an angle. No. So what would it look like if you operated from your higher chakras and attracted that kind of person, right? If you operate from higher, beautiful, more refined energies, then the likelihood of you attracting a more refined person is greater. But if you're in chaos, what is the likelihood of you attracting chaos? So what happens? We're in a chaotic relationship. We don't do any of the inner work. We blame the other person. We end the relationship. And then what? We get drunk with our friends. We party with our friends. We stir up our solar plexus even more. We don't reflect. We don't understand. And then we immediately get involved in another relationship. And then the cycle repeats itself again. We're not learning our lesson. Fascinating, right? But if you have 3 months or 6 months of doing inner work, reflecting, becoming a better person, seeing where you show up in a relationship, whenever I have a relationship end, I always go to my computer and I write out, bam, 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 bam. This is where I went wrong. This is where the other person went wrong. This is what I learned. This is what I learned about them. Da 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 da. Because I want to become a better person for my next relationship. Does that make sense? So Ellie is going all up in here. So hold on, everybody. So Ellie says, sensing at the beginning the relationship will lead to nowhere as it's not deep enough. We'll avoid a lot of uncomfortable situations. Correct. When do we trust our intuition to avoid unnecessary situations? Next topic, maybe karmic relationship. Yeah, karmic romantic relationships. You want to grow and accelerate? Get involved with a karmic romantic relationship. I can tell you all about those. So Ellie's asking a very good question. On one end, you have to spend time with that person to understand them, to know them, for them to understand and know you. So how long does that take? Well, that depends on your awareness. That depends on knowing who and what you are, your negotiables and non-negotiables. Now, the whole thing about a checklist, I'm a little hesitant about that because truth is dynamic, people are dynamic, somebody isn't 100% good or 100% bad. So you may have a non-negotiable, like the person can't be a smoker. That might be a non-negotiable for you. But the person could be super, super developed and add 100 times quality to your life. But because you said non-smoker, you automatically discard them. So it requires awareness. It requires understanding. It requires what? Active listening, which gives you the ability to ask what? Intelligent questions to that person. And through the process of awareness, understanding, asking questions, or listening and asking questions, you'll get a sense for that person. Like for me, something that I look for that's very important to me, right? And I wouldn't say it's a non-negotiable, but it's something namaste. It's something I'm aware of is the relationship that woman has with her family. For me, that's something that I've noticed that has been in my successful relationships. That was a strong factor. And in my unsuccessful relationships, not a good factor. And not just how she interacts with her family, but how I interact with her family. That's a big thing for me. But it's not a non-negotiable, but it's something I'm aware of. So this is that balance. Avani Atma Namaste. It's that balance of the hard and fast rules. It's not black or white. If they smoke, no way, right? If they're a meat eater, no way. Let's say you've never dated a different race, right? So it's a non-negotiable. The person has to be the same race. Well, then you close off the opportunity to meeting a person from another race that could be amazing, that could be beautiful, that could be everything that you're looking for. So yes, you want to have a level of knowing what you want, but you also want to be open. So another way of looking at it, see, you guys we start talking about relationships and it starts getting nuanced. Ellen, Atma Namaste. Another way of looking at it is the character of the person. Look at the character of the person. That is more important than most any other thing in the person's life. More important than the car that they drive, the house that they live in, the income that they make, or don't make, whatever. It's the character of the person. That is what you want to look for. So Ellie says, now what if the person has no family, no parents, and by family you mean parents or an extended family? Both. How is the relationship with their siblings? How is the relationship with their extended family? How is the relationship with their parents and grandparents? How is the relationship with their children if they have children, right? That's a thing to be aware of. Amanda says exactly. Yeah, exactly. So again, right? We're always looking for hard and fast rules in relationships. A big reason as to why we look for hard and fast rules is because of lack of trust, because of fear and insecurity, because it's like, this has to be here or I'm not going to be safe. This has to be here or I'm going to be taken advantage of, right? But this list, listen to me guys, this is important. This list that you put together could have been a list that you put together from your weaknesses, from your limiting beliefs, from your calcified ideas, from your insecurities. Hello? So this list is a disease congested, inaccurate list. Yes? Is this making sense? So you had a painful experience. You don't want to have that painful experience again. So you look at the factor that you think was the reason as to why you had the painful experience, and then you add it to the list. Right? But how do you know that's accurate? How do you know that's the factor? How do you know that's the thing that's going to keep you safe and secure and protected? You don't. That's why it goes back to the self. If you love yourself, if you respect yourself, if you trust yourself and you trust in God, it's kind of irrelevant of how the other person shows up. Is this making sense? Joe, Atma Namaste. Please give me a thumbs up, give me a heart, give me some acknowledgement. Hey, Michelle, Atma Namaste. That this is making sense, that you guys are understanding it, that it's adding value, that it's not over anyone's head, because I'm not here to talk over people's heads. I'm here to meet you where you're at. Because everybody that's on this stream right now, we're all at different levels. Some of us are married. Some of us are divorced. Some of us just started a relationship. Some of us have been single for years. Some, right? We're all at different spaces and times and whatever. So we're doing the best we can to give you the most general / specific advice and counsel that we can. Yes? Is this making sense? Good. So trusting in yourself. So this list that you developed, question that list. I could never date a smoker. Okay, question that a little bit. Could never date somebody who's too fat or too skinny. Question that list. I could never date an artist. Question that. I could never date, a lawyer. Question that. Question. Because by questioning, you go deeper and you understand it. Versus, I just don't do that. Because then you're coming from emotion. You're coming from a calcified thought form. You're not coming from clarity. You're not coming from wisdom. You're not coming from understanding. You're welcome, Ellie. No. You may be surprised if you date one with a non-commune united family. Don't miss it. Yeah. I had a mentor of mine say to me years ago that just because somebody is a certain level within a certain spiritual organization or a certain spiritual distinction doesn't mean that person's more evolved than somebody who's not that. Right? Which makes sense. To quote one of the master pranic healers, which I thought was beautiful, that really gave me a wonderful perspective on this. She says, you have Arhatic yoga graduates, meaning people who have taken the class, and then you have Arhatic yoga practitioners. World of difference. One person took the class, the other person took the class and practices everything they learned in that class. That person will become a very developed person, right? Just because you took a class doesn't mean anything. Just because you went to a weekend seminar, you read a book, you downloaded a podcast or meditation app or any of these things. Ron, Atma Namaste, good to have you back on. This does not mean you are a practitioner, right? Very, very important. Very, very important. Covered a lot of material today. You guys are on fire tonight with the whole questioning about relationships. I want to give a shout out, not specific, because I don't like, people like their privacy, but I want to give a shout out to my client who recommended we do the stream on tonight's topic because I love talking about relationships. I've spent 9 years studying relationships, 9 years studying the social dynamics between men and women. I have a few programs on my website, ChristianRLong.com, under the download section if you want to understand that perspective. My understanding and knowledge has expanded exponentially over the past 4 years. I created those programs about 4 years ago, and I'm looking to update them later this year because, the teacher's always learning, always growing, always evolving. What about MCKS's family, not judging them? Yeah. I mean, I'm not at liberty to discuss the teacher's family dynamic or family background. You can look it up. But, I mean, think about this. Grandmaster Cho Koksui had a big mission, big purpose in life, right? He took care of his family financially. He took care of his family when he was in town, but his mission was to go out and spread pranic healing to over 60 countries around the world in his lifetime. So he couldn't be the perfect father and he couldn't be the perfect husband because he couldn't be. I mean, would you want to travel with somebody nonstop 50 weeks out of the year around the world, never resting, always being in class, always teaching? That's a lot. That's a lot to expect of anybody. And if that's not your mission, that's not your purpose, it's like, that would be even more difficult. It's difficult for the person who has that as their mission. Think about the person who doesn't have that as their mission. Wait a minute, you want me to travel the world with you all the time? Teaching this stuff? Thanks, but no thanks, right? So I have a tremendous amount of respect for Master Choa because he sacrificed a lot. He sacrificed a lot to give us these teachings in a very simple, understandable way to transform our lives. Right? So we can only have gratitude. He sacrificed his health, family time, any kind of enjoyment of like, hey, I'm just going to hang out. I'm just going to relax today. No. From the moment the teacher was a teenager to when he left the physical body, it was go, 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 go. Ellie says, it might sound funny, but not negotiating about dating someone who is shorter in height than us, for example, where does that come from? It comes partly from evolutionary biology, right? So a taller man, historically, throughout history, we're seen as more powerful, more intelligent, closer to God. That's one aspect of, that's more cultural than biological, but that's one aspect. And that is a collective thought form that gets programmed into the consciousness of people, right? So if the person's taller, they're closer to God. The person's taller, they're more powerful, they can protect me. If the person's taller, they somehow, some way are more intelligent. But that's not necessarily the case. That's why they make the joke of the Napoleon complex of a very little man that because he's physically smaller, he has to be extrovertedly aggressive and have all these resources and armies around him to say, I may be little, but I have a whole army behind me, right? The Napoleon complex. So that in and of itself is a limiting belief. That is a limiting belief. That he's shorter than me, therefore he's not worthy of me spending my life with. Regardless of how good he is, regardless of whether he loves me or not, regardless of his generosity or not, regardless of his level of humility or not, regardless of his ability to connect with me sexually, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, regardless of all those things, he's 3 inches shorter, not interested. Okay. Right? So that would be a weird non-negotiable. Nobody in pranic healing has an easy path. Yeah, that's for sure. We're all in the process of growing and evolving, right? That's why we signed up for the pranic healing and our hatha yoga path. But does that make sense for you guys? I would encourage you to question your list. I would encourage you to question your list. All right. What did I say earlier? That I do my best to be an example of what I'm sharing with you guys. So I'm saying question your list. Yes. So I had something on my list. Yes. That I was like, it wasn't a non-negotiable, but it was pretty strong on the list until I experienced somebody that didn't fit that list, that didn't fit that aspect of the list. Now, if I made the decision to go with my list, right? This person doesn't fit this part on my list, so not interested. Then I would have missed out on a whole bunch of amazing experiences that I am extremely grateful for. And if this person is watching, I'm extremely grateful for you. More than you'll ever know. Right? Because I did what? I questioned my list. I looked at it and I go, I was open. Look, just because you're open to something doesn't mean you have to go in that direction. It just means you're open. Because when you open yourself up to something, energy can flow. But if you're closed off, no, this is the way it's got to be, period, end of story, not interested, right? Then you close off the opportunity. So it's simply opening yourself up, right? Opening yourself up. Now, the other thing to look at, see, here we are. The other thing to look at is it's one thing you have it as a non-negotiable and it's from a space of fear and anxiety and trauma, so you're not seeing it clearly. And it's another thing to be like, it's just not my thing. Like, for instance, I am not attracted to black women sexually, right? Just not my thing. Doesn't make me a bad person, doesn't make me a racist, just is what it is, right? I would be open to connecting and having a relationship with a black woman, but I'm not interested in black women, right? You guys kind of see where I'm coming from? So it's not on my list of not interested or interested. It's I'm open. I just have not found or interacted with or connected with a black woman that is my type. And that's okay. So there's the one thing of you have it on your list because it's out of a program. I don't really have it out of a program. It's just I have no energy around it. It's like whatever, right? And then I have other things that I'm very, very interested in that are very, very important to me. Some of them are from a program, right? And some of them are from life experience, consciousness, awareness, understanding, compassion, mercy. So they're from good perspectives. So all of our lists are going to be different. I would just have you question your list, examine your list, look at your list. That's all. Doesn't make you a bad person, doesn't make you a good person, doesn't make you any kind of person other than somebody who wants to develop awareness and understanding. That's all. That makes sense? Like, you would say, well, Christian, would you be open to having a relationship with a man? I'm not interested in guys, right? So it's not a matter of, well, is that coming from a limiting belief? Is that coming from a whatever? It's like, no, I just don't have an interest in men. And that's okay. Does that make sense? It's not coming, I'm not interested in men because it's coming from trauma or limiting belief or a calcified idea. I'm just not interested in men. I wouldn't want to have an intimate relationship with a man. But there are people that are like, want to have that deep in their heart. They want to have that connection with a man, a same-sex individual, but they don't because of fear of judgment, societal norms, all of these things. That's what I'm asking you to look at. That's what I'm asking you to examine. So like, I come from a family that we can only date within our religion or date within our race, right? And there are people like that. You have to date somebody from our religion or you have to date somebody from our race. But deep down, the person's like, I would love to date a person from another religion or date a person from another race or culture or whatever. That's what I'm talking about, right? Those are calcified ideas. Those are programs that are instilled in us by religion, by our culture, by our family, by our geography, by all these different factors. And I'm just asking you guys to question those things. That's all. I'm not saying that you're wrong, your family is wrong, your choices are wrong. None of those. I'm saying, are you suffering with your list? Are you suffering with your list? If you're suffering, you need to change your viewpoint. You don't really need to change your list. You need to change your viewpoint, which would alleviate your suffering. Does that make sense? God, I feel like we covered 73 different topics on tonight's stream. I remember I did a week ago, we did a 90-minute stream, and I was uploading it to YouTube. Yeah, I was uploading it to YouTube, and it took like hours. Typically when I load a video, it takes like maybe 5 to 6 minutes, but for some reason, a 90-minute video took hours to upload on YouTube. I have no idea why, what the problem was. But so if you guys are not following us on YouTube, please do. These live streams that we do on Facebook, we upload them to YouTube, right? So it makes it easily accessible, easier to search. You make comments, the comments stay there forever, right? So the YouTube channel is my name, Christian R. Long. So if you're not subscribed, please subscribe. We're appreciate for getting the word out. We've been increasing our subscribers over the past month because we've been getting the word out more often. And if you enjoy the channel, we have hundreds of videos. You heard that correctly. We have hundreds of videos on there about energy healing, meditation, and practical spirituality for the purpose of improving the quality of your life in your relationships, your health, your finances, your spiritual growth and development, right? Does that make sense? Is that clear for you guys? I hope it is. Covered a lot of information. Ellie's in a completely different time zone, so she's like, Christian, if you just stop talking, I can go to bed. Thank you, but please let me go to bed. That being said, going once, going twice, are there any other final questions, comments, or clarifications that you guys have about the super complex topic that we covered tonight on relationships? And I want to thank each and every one of you for sharing your time, your energy, your questions, your comments. It adds value. Every time you throw out a question or a comment, it adds value to everybody else who watches it live or watches the replay. So thank you very much for that. It's greatly appreciated. And I'm noticing, listening to my microphone on my iPhone, like plugging in a microphone and putting it a lapel mic versus this mic works better. Sounds better. That's funny. So Ellie has 2% left on her battery life. Harita, namaste. You're late to the party, girl. You're going to have to watch the replay. So that being said, thank you guys very, very much for sharing your time, energy with all of us. For those of you who need healing, hire me at ChristianRLong.com. Let me know how I can serve you. Yep, today's stream is again 90 minutes. 90 minutes! Good Lord. Went by so fast. All extemporaneously spoken. That was a mouthful. Love you guys very, very much. This is Christian Long, Life Enhancement Consultant, wishing you a beautiful day, a beautiful week, and a beautiful life. Atma, namaste. Bye-bye.